Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
There are two words on everyone's tongue. And those two words, actually, technically, it's one word according to the executives there, but it's basically two words. Those words, Powerball. Why are those words on everyone's lips? Well, that's because the Powerball jackpot is up over an estimated $1.3 billion. That's billion with a B. And as happens when the jackpots wind up getting this large, people prove that they are bad at math. And what do I mean, people prove that they are bad at math? No, I'm not talking about the people that wind up buying lottery tickets, even though the statistics are not in their favor. What I'm talking about are the people that will go to social media to say things like, the jackpot's $300 million. There's 300 million people in America. Just give everybody $1 million. Poverty solved. And I saw something earlier today that said the jackpot's $1.3 billion. Give everybody $4 million. Poverty solved. But the problem is, and this is where people show that they're bad at math, the problem is, if you give 300 million people $4 million each, you're going to have $1.3 trillion that you're giving out, not $1.3 billion. Actually, no, I think I just proved that I am bad at math. But it's not going to be $1.3 billion if you give everybody $4 million. Because if you have, let me do the math with you here. If you have 300 million people and you give everybody $1, how many dollars have you given out? Yes, that's correct, 300 million. If you give everybody one more dollar, that winds up being a total of 600 million. Give them a third dollar, that's 900 million. A fourth dollar, yes, that's right, that fourth dollar winds up putting it at 1.2 billion. So you could give everybody $4, but not $4 million. And so 4, and then trillion is 1,000 billion. So $4,000 would be 1 trillion. So then multiply that times another 1,000 would be quadrillion, and then whatever is after that is how many dollars you would need to wind up giving everybody millions of dollars to quote-unquote solve poverty, which you then would not solve poverty. You would just make everything more expensive, and people would still be poor. Have you ever heard of this thing called hyperinflation? Yeah, it happened in Zimbabwe, where people had $100 trillion notes that did not buy anything. These pieces of paper are more valuable now as collector items than they ever were as currency in Zimbabwe. There's a problem down in Venezuela with hyperinflation, although we don't know if it's hyperinflation because the Venezuelan government stopped keeping track of the official inflation rate about a year ago. But toilet paper is so expensive, it's cheaper for people to use their bolivars to wipe their derriere. Although my guess is they're not having to wipe their derriere very often because there's almost no food in Venezuela. Thank you, black market. Why is the black market causing there to be no food? Well, because of price controls. It's cheaper for people to smuggle the food out of the country and then sell it. That and nobody is shipping things into Venezuela because of, yes, price controls. So hyperinflation just means that there's a lot more money, but everything costs more, and you still can't buy anything, so people are still broke. But back to the Powerball. And yes, I did buy some tickets, And yes, I know that it's statistically unlikely that I will wind up winning the jackpot. But even if I wind up, winning a couple $100, all right, it's still better than not winning a couple $100, right? And also, you can't win if you don't play. But why am I talking about the Powerball? Obviously, I'm not talking about Powerball to talk about math and statistics. I am talking about Powerball because, well, the executive, Charles Strutt, apparently quietly quit as there is a nationwide investigation into lottery rigging. And actually, this story is older than I thought. I saw the headline a couple days ago and thought that this happened just recently. Well, it happened recently, but it happened back before Christmas, and no one was really talking about it. But again, I saw this headline just a couple days ago, so I thought that it was relatively new. Like, we've got these huge jackpots, and then it's very suspicious that this guy quit. But apparently he quit back before Christmas. But nonetheless, I have the story from the New York Daily News. They report a prominent lottery official who has run the Powerball game since its inception was quietly removed from his 28-year-old post, leading the Multi-State Lottery Association after a jackpot-fixing scandal inside his organization got bigger. That, according to documents obtained by the Associated Press. Charles Strutt, executive director of the association since its 1987 founding, was stripped of his duties in October by the group's board, which includes directors of the lotteries in 37 states and U.S. territories. The move came days after prosecutors said their investigation of jackpot fixing by the association's former security director, Eddie Tipton, had expanded nationwide. The association, which operates multi-state games such as Hot Lotto and Wild Card, in addition to Powerball, has kept the leadership change quiet. And I would say so. If he was removed in October, the news came out in December, and here it is, January of 2016, and I'm just now hearing about it. The story continues. They did not announce their decision, and the website lists Strutt still as the executive director. This, at least according to lottery director Jeff Anderson in December, who added that he could not comment on a personnel matter. But an October 15th email obtained by the Associated Press through an open records request, Anderson, that's the Idaho lottery director, Jeff Anderson, told board members that Strutt had been placed on indefinite administrative leave and that his longtime deputy, Brett Toney, was appointed interim executive director. Anderson wrote of Strutt, quote, "He accepted the decision of the MUSL board," that's the Multi-State Lotto Board, "and was helpful in sharing his thoughts on what was necessary for the future." Anderson said that Toney, that's the guy that's the replacement, Brett Toney, will be an effective leader who can guide the future of the MUSL. Strutt declined comment, saying Anderson is in the group's spokesman during, or rather was the group's spokesman during internal reviews. There's a little bit more on this. Plus, did you hear about this 15-year standoff? Well, it came to an end. I'll tell you about it.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davy Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
Investigators into the Powerball rigging have said the evidence so far shows that Tipton was the only lottery official involved in the scheme. And again, this was as of December 23rd of last year, but this article just came across my desk a couple of days ago. The Urbandale, Iowa-based association, that's the Multi-State Lottery Association, has been rocked by the case against Tipton, who was convicted in July of fraud for working with associates to attempt to claim a fixed $16.5 million hot lotto jackpot. Strutt testified for the prosecution, saying he believed the person shown on video buying the winning ticket in Des Moines was Tipton. On October 9th, investigators announced they had uncovered new evidence showing Tipton worked with associates to fix jackpots and claim prizes worth millions of dollars in Colorado and Wisconsin. Since then, the case has expanded to include jackpots in Oklahoma and Kansas. And it appears there's more to this article, but there's a giant picture in the middle of the screen, and it's taking my browser a moment to scroll down. Investigators allege that Tipton used his access to the association's random number generator to know winning combinations in advance. Then he and his associates played those numbers and shared the prizes. And I'm sorry to tell you, but if it's a random number generator that's only supposed to generate random numbers at the time of the drawing, and you're able to see those beforehand, well, it's not a random number generator, and it's probably not that random if you can know the numbers beforehand. Tipton, who denies the allegations, is scheduled to face a second trial next month. The association fired the 11-year security employee after his January arrest, replaced machines he worked on, and strengthened its security measures. Strutt, who is 63, retains support among some board members and hopes to return to his position when the Tipton case concludes. Dawn Nettles, a Texas-based lottery watchdog, says, quote, "The truth is the lotteries voted Chuck out. They're holding him accountable for the actions of that security guy, but they don't want anybody to know." Strutt was the first employee when 6 states formed the association to offer the nation's first multi-state game, Lotto America. The group launched Powerball in 1992, and the game has since generated some of the world's largest jackpots and billions of dollars in revenue for 44 states that now participate. Strutt also helped establish the association's other games, which collectively surpass $5 billion in annual sales. Nettles, a fierce lottery critic, said she's known Strutt for years and found him to be the most honest, open lottery administrator in the country, adding, "I'd be disappointed for Chuck's career to end on this note." And, of course, because this did wind up happening back in December, I will have to check to see what happened with this, see if I can get a follow-up, and I will let you know at some point in the near future if there is anything new to report on this. However, there's something that apparently has been happening for nearly 15 years that I never knew about, and, well, it recently came to a close, and that's how I found out about it. The headline from WFAA, which I believe is in Dallas, Texas, ABC 8. Again, I believe it's in Dallas, Texas. They report from Trinidad, Texas, after almost 15 years, what is believed to be the longest armed standoff in American history quietly came to a peaceful close. This story, dated January 8th, reports about on Wednesday, which would wind up have been last Wednesday, so January 6th, is when this 15-year standoff ended. Henderson County Sheriff Ray Nutt says, being a peace officer, you do have some emotions that you would like to see him brought before court and the case tried, but on the other hand, was it worth all that it might have cost to do that? And you might be wondering, what is this guy talking about? Well, let me tell you. And I don't like the way this article is constructed, but nonetheless, it is constructed the way it is. Apparently, in 1999, a man named John Joe Gray was arrested for assaulting a state trooper during a traffic stop. Gray said it was his God-given right to carry the pistol he had that day without a concealed handgun license. When the trooper tried to arrest him, Gray admits getting into a scuffle and biting the officer. Gray was eventually charged with assaulting a public servant, but refused to return to court and instead armed himself at home. Gray told ABC News in an interview back in the year 2000, "If they come out after us, bring extra body bags. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword." Since the felony charge in 1999, Gray has never left his 47 acres along the banks of the Trinity River between the towns of Toole and Trinidad, Texas. Instead, Gray, his children, grandchildren, and friends patrol the property with pistols and rifles and refuse to let strangers on the property. National Geographic said it took a crew 2 years to earn the family's trust recently, and Gray told National Geographic, "We've never shot no one yet, but they know if they come on us, they'll be surprised what's going to happen to them." Gray added, or rather the article here adds, the felony charge of assaulting a police officer was actually dismissed in December 2014 when the district attorney left office, but for some reason no one notified the Henderson County Sheriff's Office or even the Gray family until now. Still, what happened in this rural Texas county is unlike the standoff underway in Oregon, according to the Henderson County Sheriff, again, Ray Nutt. The sheriff explained, those folks have occupied a public building. Joe Gray is on his 47 acres that he owns out there. The Grays painted their paranoia on signs posted along the fence saying vaccinations equal annihilation, or at least that's one of the signs. Anyway, Sheriff Nutt said he's glad the district attorney decided to drop the charges, adding, yeah, it takes pressure off people and it takes pressure off them. There's always been the potential for something bad happening. Nutt said he did not go get Gray because deputies could have died. Said it was not worth it. Joe Gray has been in prison out there himself, in my opinion, for 14 years. It was justice served, according to the sheriff, in a felony case that never went to court. And for the first time this century, Joe Gray is free to leave his home. And I just find this to be incredibly interesting because it's not something that ever wound up making any sort of national news. And even when I lived in Texas, I never heard about this. So it mustn't have been anything too terribly important for the Henderson County Sheriffs there in Texas. And according to the headline here, it is just outside of Dallas. But it's interesting that this guy who bit a police officer, and I'm not in any manner or any form of way condoning biting a police officer, but this guy bit a police officer, and then when they said you need to come to court, he said nope, and he stayed on his property for 14 plus years. That is just asinine to me. I cannot imagine staying in one spot for that freaking long.
In 1999, Darryl W. Perry began a search for traditional values which led him down a path to the ideas of liberty. He tells the story in A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty. Of the book, Dr. Brian Sovereign says, sometimes it's funny, and sometimes I think it's crazy, but it's always authentic. Find A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty by Darryl W. Perry on Facebook, read reviews on Amazon, ask for A Rebel's Journey wherever books are sold, or visit arebelsjourney.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
So I did some checking, and I don't see any real update on the Powerball scandal. I did find an article dated January 10th that references that Strutt was removed as the director of the Multi-State Lottery Association, but that was it. There was no update that he had been retained or placed back into the position, that he was officially terminated, or anything else. It makes it sound as though he's still on this administrative leave sort of thing. Now, there's another story that I'll jump into here in just a second, but I know that if you're listening to this show, you probably support free markets. And wouldn't it be nice to keep your money in the free market and use free market money while doing so? And, well, you can actually do that. And I'm guessing also that since you listen to the show, you like Bitcoin, and you probably use and promote Bitcoin as an alternative in a fiat-centric world. If so, then you need Spend a Bit in your arsenal. Spend a Bit is the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend a Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend a Bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin accepting merchant, like I am, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit, all one word, .fppradio.com. So here's an interesting story, or at least interesting to me, because I do some media. I don't do a lot of video. I do mostly print and audio, but I would love to do more video. And I've thought about getting one of these drone sort of things with video camera to do some stuff. But, well, one, they're not exactly cheap, and the ones that are, or rather, let me say, they're not inexpensive. And the ones that are inexpensive have virtually no flight time. They've got like 7 minutes of flying time, and then it takes 8 hours to recharge the battery. Well, you can't really do anything good with 7 minutes of video. Like, if you're going to be covering an event, chances are that event's going to last a lot longer than 7 minutes. So the really high quality that have hours of flight time, those things cost upwards of thousands of dollars, or you could wind up building your own, and again, that's going to be very expensive. And not to mention, the FAA is now cracking down and regulating and saying, if you have one of these, you have to register, and that means you have to jump through hoops and hurdles and supply all kinds of information to the federal government, and then they will give you a registration number to put onto your unmanned aerial drone, or actually it's unmanned aerial vehicle that is shortened to drone. And, well, now the FAA is saying that if you fly a drone and post footage on YouTube, you could wind up in some legal trouble. The story comes from Motherboard. And again, this is an older story. This came out last March, but I'm just now seeing it. Last March, the FAA sent a legal notice to Jason Haynes, a Tampa-based drone hobbyist, who has been posting drone shot videos online for roughly the last year. The FAA said that because there are ads on YouTube, Haynes' flights constituted a commercial use of the technology subject to stricter regulations and enforcement. So there's definitely more to this article, but really that's what you need to know, is the FAA is concluding that if you monetize something using something that flies in the air, then that's commercial air travel, and so therefore you're subject to their regulations. The story from Vice continues. It says, the agency said that if he did not stop flying commercially, he could be subject to fines and or sanctions. The letter reads, quote, "This office has received a complaint regarding your use of an unmanned aerial vehicle, aka drone, for commercial purposes, referencing your video on the website youtube.com as evidence. After a review of your website, it does appear that the complaint is valid." And then the article from Vice has a couple of videos linked into the middle of the page here. And while I wait on this to scroll down, I just want to, again, say that it's kind of ridiculous that they're construing. He placed a video on YouTube and monetized it, meaning that an ad would pop up either before or during the video, that somehow makes his flying of what is essentially a remote control airplane with a video camera on it commercial air travel. It's absolutely ridiculous. If I put a sticker for some business somewhere on a paper airplane and then I fly the paper airplane, does that then mean, well, one, I'm advertising because I've got the sticker for the place, and two, it's going through the air, so does that make my paper airplane commercial air travel? Would that then subject me to regulation by the FAA for advertising on a commercial airplane? And you might realize then how ridiculous this entire thing is. The article from Vice continues. The hobby use of drones and other model aircraft has never been regulated by the FAA, but the agency has been adamant about making a distinction between hobby and commercial use, which has led to much confusion over the last couple of years. Where exactly does commercial use begin and hobby use end, for instance? If you fly for fun but happen to sell your footage later, were you flying for a commercial purpose? What if you give it to a news organization that runs it on a television station that has ads? What if you uploaded it to YouTube and Google happens to put an ad on it? What if you decide to put an ad on it yourself? The letter makes clear that at least some in the FAA, this particular letter sent by Michael Singleton, an aviation safety inspector in the FAA's Tampa office, make sure that some in the FAA take a very wide view of what is considered commercial. Peter Sachs, a Connecticut-based attorney specializing in drone issues, told me, not me personally, Darryl, but me, the reporter writing the article. Peter Sachs, a Connecticut-based attorney, told the writer of this article, quote, "With this letter, the FAA is claiming that drone-obtained art created by a hobbyist becomes retroactively commercial if it is ever sold or if it, as here, it is displayed on a website that offers monetization in the form of advertising. Selling art is unquestionably one's right, and the government is forbidden from infringing upon that right." Haynes says that his videos are technically monetized on YouTube, but that he has never received a payment from Google, and the revenue he's technically earned is less than $1. Hey, don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions. Send those over at AMA@FPP Radio.